Welcome, everybody. Today is just not a great day. It's a fabulous day. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group, and I got a special guest today on our podcast from Pakistan. I've got Osama Rizvi, and Osama, I've had a pleasure of being able to follow him on LinkedIn, and we're going to have his contact information in the show notes. He is a true industry thought leader and teaches college and teaches other folks. We're going to have a nice talk about the world of energy and things going on in Pakistan. Thank you, Osama, for stopping by.
Thank you so very much, Stuart, for such a lovely and very kind introduction.
Oh, well, I'll pay you later. But you know what, as we sit back, I've got two main articles that we really want to cover, and this is your time. I really want to cover things that are important to you. I always enjoy, when I see a post from you, I snag it. I want to make sure that I see it. And before we get started, you were talking about who you were teaching. You just had a class this morning, and it's what, 7 o'clock there now, I think, in Pakistan?
Yeah, 7 p.m. Yep.
And I was up at 4 a.m. Central U.S. time to try to visit you. So tell us about your class.
Yeah, so I, amongst other things, I also happen to teach in World Times Institute. It's one of the best institutes in Pakistan that trains people for competitive examinations in Pakistan. So India and Pakistan have this bureaucratic structure to them, right. Sort of a colonial legacy, if we can be frank, but it has retained itself. So the whole government machinery, such as the assistant commissioners, the district commissioners, people going into police, people going to foreign services, people going into different, National Accountability Bureau and other departments of the government, they come here, they prepare for the examinations. Most of them who have already cleared the written examinations, they come here and they prepare for the interview. So I train them regarding the communication, regarding international relations, regarding, how to do argument and how to actually be respectful and at the same time, drive home your point and sort of these things. So I give classes on topics like energy, climate change. My favorite is actually, by the way, not surprisingly, the asymmetry in carbon emissions between the global north and global south. And then I also train them for the interviews in terms of communication, body language, non-verbal, verbal, and all sort of things. Yes.
Boy, those are life skills. All of that is very important.
One more thing, we also have a YouTube channel as well, where I'm the host of a podcast, just like you. So I host a podcast as well. We invite thought leaders, senior people from the government or senior authors. And, we try to present, as you know, I always try to look at the apolitical, objective analysis and point of view of anything. So I try my best to do that.
Fantastic. What's the name of the podcast?
It's the WTI Talks, the World Times Institute Talks, the WTI Talks.
Oh, I was like, man, you're honoring West Texas Intermediate.
Intermediate. Well, maybe.
I like your description better, but you had two articles, and you and I were chit-chatting right before this episode about the travesty of the Pakistani people, and there was a story that came out that one of our joint acquaintances, David Blackman, had also we'd talked about on a different podcast with him, and that was the children and the lack of energy in the Pakistan communities for natural gas. And they were carrying bags of natural gas. That's kind of like a bomb waiting to happen. I mean, that's not good. Tell us what's going on with that.
So domestic gas production in Pakistan has been falling since 1990s. And that is where it gets trickier, because given the diplomatic orientation of our country, it isn't very easy for Pakistan, let's say, to get, friendly with Russia, which can be a savior for us, right, in terms of gas, where Russia has a large, very big gas production going on and everything. But that said, there are lots of inherent internal issues due to which our gas production have fallen. Of course, first of all, no focus on the research and development thing. Our oil and gas reserves have been exhausted, about more than 44% of them. There was a recent story. I'll share it with you after the podcast, actually. It was really, unnerving to learn about this, that the reserves, we have exhausted the very reserves. And Pakistan's daily oil production, oil consumption isn't that high. It's around 500,000 barrels per day. So, but due to the lack of any ENP activity, due to the lack of capex, given the whole scenario where we operate in, it's actually getting really bad. So you talk about, and even in my house, right? So I'm fortunate enough to live in I live in a very centralized location. So the, all the important buildings and government buildings and all are on the same, is in the vicinity. So you assume that it would be a good area to live in, quote unquote. However, we get no gas. There is no gas at all. We have to cook on a cylinder as well, on a gas cylinder. I am a very, I'm a very finicky person in that, because they are literal bombs. You just, one wrong whack on it, or if, you can't handle the pressure on them, they're literal bombs. But turns out every household, or most of the households, are using it.
Right.
Moreover, in Pakistan, about 1/3 of our electricity is produced by natural gas, and most of that natural gas, oil and gas, and most of that is imported. And what happened this month, Stuart, was that ENI, and the Italian firm ENI, due to some reason, they could not deliver Pakistan the whole cargo for this month. So we have no gas for the whole month of Feb.
Oh, for the LNG, the LNG tanker that didn't come in.
Yeah, and I don't know how, as temperatures rise, as the electricity consumption goes off the charts, because it gets really, really hot. Because it's scorching sun, it gets really hot here, and the electricity consumption goes beyond the levels it is right now. I don't see how the industry, how the manufacturing sector, especially the textile industry, which accounts for 60% of our export earnings, one sector, 60% of our export earnings, and textile sector is majorly dependent upon government electricity and gas provision. I don't know how the summers are going to unfold. It's a very serious situation.
I've always taken a look at, just as a consumer, some of the goods and things that come out of Pakistan. I've got two beautiful leather briefcases here from Pakistan. Yeah. I didn't even know they were from Pakistan until I ordered them off of Amazon. And then all of a sudden it was like, holy smokes, this is from Pakistan.
Yeah.
That kind of trade is important.
Yeah, Pakistan's leather industry, Pakistan's sports industry, Pakistan's surgical equipment industry, all of these are top class and world class. But unfortunately, there is a limit when you don't get gas, when you don't get electricity. The liquidity issue springs in, and only those who can survive. The big guns, the nodes that have a lot of power, only that can survive. That disrupts the whole competition spectrum, that disrupts the whole internal economy of a country, right? Some of the companies might be able to get a lot of profit from the current situation, but I'm talking about overall. So just to give you the context, about 7 million people have been laid off in the textile sector. 7 million.
What's the time period, Osama?
In this year.
This year?
This year, 7 million.
Wow.
This fiscal year. It's crazy. It means 7 million families, right?
Is that because of the energy, Osama? Is that because of the energy crisis?
Yes, so majorly, I would say there are lots of different reasons. First of all, Due to the rising cost of energy, by the way, the gas prices were increased 122% overnight recently. 122% overnight in Pakistan.
This is worse than it's being told over here. We're not.
Yes. That is crazy. And petrol prices are over 100% increased year-on-year basis. Similarly, electricity prices are about 110 or 150% more as compared to last year.
Wow.
Car prices have increased 150% year-on-year.
That was in your article. I was like,
yes.
Tell us about that. Tell us the article titled in the Business Recorder, Pakistan's crisis is a moral one, not an economic one. First, I want to give you a shout out as an author. And this was in the Business Recorder. So you write for the Business Recorder. Is that correct?
Amongst many. I have had the honor to write in every English newspaper of my country. I've had the honor to do that.
Nice. Well done. And being a true industry thought leader, it's reflected in your thoughts on LinkedIn. And that's how I met and started following you.
Oh, thank you.
But tell us about this article, because I saw this and it was like, whoa, wait a minute, I got to talk to you.
Yeah. So I wrote clearly, when you see the language and the style I've written this in, I wrote it in I was really exasperated and disappointed. It is really frustrating as a sentient human being, you and me and others who tend to be sensitive enough to be affected by, the socio-political economic environment around us.
Right.
It is unnerving. It is so disturbing to see whatever is happening right now. And I believe, Google is full of facts and figures. There are millions of professors in Pakistan who have extremely good degrees, PhDs, technocrats and whatnot. They have the solutions and everything. There is only one thing that we lack. That is the political will to implement those brilliant solutions and everything. So as I've mentioned in the article, that individual brilliance is dying a slow death because of the overall decaying environment where those individuals lie. So I wrote it.
Wow.
It was sort of a rant, because whatever is happening, this is a crisis of morality because nobody is doing their job properly. If I was the energy minister, or if I was at the helm of the affairs right now, I would be worried. Instead of the political mudslinging and instead of the political, intrigues, I would be worried, what are we going to do in summers, June, July, and August, when the temperatures hit 55 degrees Celsius?
Right.
55 degrees Celsius. What are we going to do when we are not getting LNG? What exactly is going to happen? Are we going? So Pakistan, like I was reading in Bloomberg and other stories, they are covering a lot of power blackouts in South Africa, right? Guess what? That is the usual life here in Pakistan. It's the normal life here. Those blackouts that are being covered so widely and that is surprising for many, it's the norm in Pakistan. 15 to 16 hours of load shedding, as it is called. It's the norm. It's been happening in the past 7-8 years.
Wow. And it's their I'm sorry, I get so excited because there's so many things that are parallel from what you just said to the United States administration and how they're handling things. They're even saying that blackouts are on the horizon, which is very unusual around the United States. And it's because of the grid, putting renewables on the grid without proper planning. And you got to have planning on the grid, and our grid has not had any money put on it. But the South Africa and the political stuff, and you also talk about inflation. What's going on with the inflation as well?
Yeah. First of all, I'm really surprised, and I continue to get these sporadic shocks, if you may. Once I read news coming out of the Western world or the developed part of the world as well. Seems like at many points the developed and developing countries are converging, which is quite concerning, especially for the developed countries, because the developing countries for them, it's unfortunately business as usual, right? But
Right.
as you said, for a developed country like the US to say that the blackouts are on the way, that's like something very serious and concerning. Coming back to the inflation. So the story of inflation is Pakistan is very different. I these days I am trying to explore, because I have been sort of frustrated, or you can say I am unimpressed by the futility of the policy lever, that is the interest rates.
Right.
Why do I say that? I have my degree in economics as well, and I know how it works. Inflation goes up, you increase the interest rates, inflation comes down.
Right.
But the point is, in Pakistan, we have cost push inflation. There is no demand pull inflation. Pakistan is going through a classic stagflationary phase.
Okay.
Inflation is 31%, 31.5%. That is the official number.
You said 51%?
31%.
31. Okay.
But Steve Hank from the Johns Hopkins University, he puts out inflation figures based on purchasing power parity, which gives a true picture of what the inflation is. And according to him, inflation levels in Pakistan are about 67%. And I was just in the class and I told them this, and I asked them that which level do you think feels more right? They all said 67%.
Wow.
Because
that's food, that's energy, that's
40% of this increase in inflation has been because of food. And Pakistan, Stuart, is the second most vulnerable country to rising food prices in the world after Nigeria. An average Pakistani household spend 51% of their income on basic food items. Can you just imagine the extent of this calamity? So there is inflation touching 67%. Then there is food price inflation, which is more than that. And then you have 51% of your household income is spent on basic food items. It's catastrophic.
It's not sustainable.
That's what I'm saying, actually. And people, I steer clear from politics. Absolutely. I don't delve into political analysis. I do not comment on anything, because for me, it is all noise, the noise versus signal thing. So this is all noise. I don't want my mind to be adulterated by this, I don't know, sort of, for lack of a better word, but something like that. But the point is, whatever is happening right now, I believe, and I've been saying this continuously, I believe that we're nearing the proverbial tipping point. So we're near the tipping point, and whatever is happening right now, it won't evaporate, it won't dilute, it won't dissolve. Something new will come out of it. Whether it will be positive, whether it will be negative, but something new. Business as usual won't continue. I absolutely do not believe.
Wow. And I think Pakistan is only systemic of what's coming around for Europe, what's coming around. And you nailed it just a minute ago when you said things are, when you see the West and then other countries are merging together. And I from a cultural standpoint, if you said Pakistan's already doing these things, they're going to deal with it a little easier. It's still going to be horrible.
Yeah.
The Americans don't know how to do anything.
I know.
My granddad came into Oklahoma on a covered wagon. My dad did not have indoor plumbing until he was 16. I'm of the generation that I can get by on very little. Anybody past me is not going to be able to do it very well.
You see, during all the COVID time, so I happened to be in London during the COVID, at the peak of the COVID. I was doing my master's in global political economy from University of London at that point. And so my friends and I sort of saw a reflection of this. It's not something that is inherently wrong, with the people there, but it's just that due to the progress and industrialization and all of these things, people have led a very comfortable life in these parts of the world.
Right.
For a person here, an average person, literally, I'm not kidding, any typical American muscular bodybuilder or anyone would not even survive a month here when he comes
Right.
home after 8-hour workday, and when he's about to open the tap to wash his face, he finds that there is no water because there is no water. And you lay
Wow.
down on the bed and you say, okay, it's 55 degrees Celsius out there. I've worked 8 hours. Now I'm back. There is no water. At least I can have some, I can watch the TV. And then there is no electricity, no water, no electricity. All right, what's happening outside? Let's go outside and find. Oh, there is a protest happening. There is a sit-in. Doctors are staging a sit-in outside the main road because the salaries aren't enough. All right, imagine the strain on your mental health. Imagine the strain on your mental health. This is years over years over years over years. So somehow I developed a sort of, I was at an anti-fragile position when I went to London. And due to COVID, people were having mental issues and mental health issues. And for me, I said, oh, I'm having the time of my life because, I never had the provision of a 24-hour running warm water, no electricity, blackouts.
Wow.
But this is the reality. I mean, people need to, I used to highlight this, Stuart, in my class amongst my professors, because I think that the academia, that the whole discourse, and I said this in David's podcast as well, it is so tipped unfairly towards a Eurocentric point of view that we tend to forget that half of the, or more than half of the humanity lives in conditions that are unimaginable for many people in the developed countries.
And from a socio standpoint, when people don't understand how to even survive the basics, it gets really ugly.
Yeah.
And so it's not sustainable. Do you see any solutions, even though you, Osama, you stay out of the politics from that standpoint? What solutions do you see? Because those may be able to transport to the West.
Yes. So the point is, there are solutions, of course. There are solutions at any given point. Right now, the solutions will not be quite palatable for most of the people, unfortunately, because to the extent to which we have managed to mess this up, it will require, a lot of, surgeries. Pakistan has many a times been compared to a patient in the ICU, right? So we will need some intensive care, and that, the drugs involved in intensive care may or may not be very healthy for your body, right? In the shorter run, in the longer run. But you need to go through it in order to survive so that you don't die. So that is the similar analogy for Pakistan. Right now, Pakistan is about to get the state level agreement with the IMF, staff level agreement with the IMF, SLA. Once that happens, I believe the current uncertainty would die down. However, to make that happen, government has already devalued Pakistani rupee by a lot, historic. Our interest rates are at 20%, the highest in the country's history, 20% interest rates. Cement sales are down, petroleum sales are down. I've already told you about the food prices. Onion prices increased 415% in 1 year.
Wow.
And onion is a product that is used by all and sundry in all sorts of food items.
Everything. I love onions.
Yeah. So I'm looking at some really tough measures in terms of fiscal discipline, in terms of austerity. I am not really a fan of IMF's policies, but that's a different discussion. But as we have managed to mess this up, there is no other way or savior for us than the IMF. So we will get the IMF staff level agreement. We will have to endure decade high electricity bills. We'll have to endure decade high petrol prices and all these things. But it can go away if the policymakers start to turn a new leaf and the history of the country, and they start to work on what I call the structural issues. They start to address low productivity. They start to address the falling agricultural yield of our country. They start to address the energy crisis and the circular debt within the energy crisis.
Wow.
They start to reshape the short-termism in policy making with long-term political policy approach.
Right.
They stop taking popular measures just to make the people happy, and in the end unhappy. So these are some of the things I've said this multiple times, that we need to work on resolving the structural issues of Pakistan. Until or unless that happens, we will continue to go, to IMF. The love affair, the tryst with IMF would never end.
Right.
We have already had 23 agreements with IMF since our independence. 23 times we have been to the IMF. It can go up until 30. And you and I both know that IMF policies aren't really healthy for a developing country's economy. But then that is not their issue. That is our issue. We go to them, they don't come to us. So, but I'm sort of 50-50. I believe the current crisis would be averted. I'm talking about the economic crisis. But we need to work a lot in order to secure our future.
And attraction of energy production, if you've lost 60% of your reserves, how do you attract outside investments into developing your thing? Because that almost seems like a better way to invite investing in rather than borrowing money. That to me seems a better fix.
You are absolutely right. But for that, Stuart, you need to work on what is called the ease of doing business index. For that, we need to work on standardization, digitalization of our economy, so that when an international investor comes into Pakistan to invest, he does not find himself being submerged with hundreds of permits and thousands of steps to getting one thing done, the second thing done, and all the bureaucratic red tapeism and administrative hindrances and whatnot. So FDI, yes, we need to increase the capex. We need to increase ENB activity in Pakistan by a lot. But that would require a stable. First and foremost, it will require a stable political environment. Wow. That is the key, and that is where things get a little tricky.
Wow. Hey, from I believe you had in your article, and I have to think about this. It was Pakistan's ballpark 16-17% natural gas. A lot of that's imported in from LNG. How much of it's coal for your energy?
So it's about 27%. Coal is responsible for the 27% of our. This 27% is for the electricity. I'm not sure for the total energy mix, but 27 to 30% of electricity is made from coal.
Wow, that's a lot of coal. And so is the natural gas is if you don't get that LNG shipment coming in.
I know. And that's why it surprises me when I hear people talking about that Pakistan should decarbonize. How are we exactly going to do that?
And the cost of decarbonization is something that is, why don't we try to get the lowest cost kilowatt per hour to all people of the planet with the least amount of impact on the environment? That seems like a fairly easy solution. If we got to, you nailed it, Osama. You got to have the political working together.
Yes.
In the U.S., we finally had one bill of unanimous between the Republicans and the Democrats, and it was to release the origins of COVID.
My God.
Why don't we get more of that on energy? Anyway, hey, we've already solved the world's problems here. Why don't we just work?
Just like that.
We've got about 5 more minutes, but I do want to share one horrible story with you. And that is one of my dear friends he and I were scoutmasters, Boy Scouts together with our sons, and we were going through there. We were on a camping trip, and he and I have had great religious discussions our entire life, and through our going through these things, loved our discussions. And I kept saying him fall down and then come back up, fall down and come back up in the bushes. And I thought he was having a heart attack. So I came over and gave him a chug. It turns out he was doing his call to prayer. So he thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen, is me trying to rescue him from his call to prayer. And so when you ask for the stopping of the call to prayer, I understand, but at least I didn't tackle you and then try to save you from the call to prayer because I thought you were having a heart attack.
That is good that we're doing this online.
So Osama, what are your thoughts about coming around the corner? What's next for Osama, since you're teaching, you're writing for the papers, and you are looking at all these other kind of things going on? What's coming around the corner for you personally?
Yes, I am thinking, and I've been thinking this from quite a while, to start working on the first draft of my book.
Nice.
That is something that is something, because once again, I just want to point out that I have seen a criminal lack of the other side of the coin, which is the developing countries, the global south, in the global literature and global research and all those things. So I really want to,
Right.
I really want to contribute, or really want to bridge the gap between, both the worlds, by highlighting, not pinpointing, and not blaming any one sort of ideological orientation or geographic orientation, but just trying to bridge the gap between that. Look, this is another world. Look, this is another world. People live like this as well. People live like this as well. So that we embrace the inclusivity, that is the beauty of the world. So that's somewhere there. I also want to, of course, continue building up my research skills and writing, continue even write more. I'm really trying to look forward to work on the energy demand being created in the global south, or the Asian continent, in the Asian continent, because you see, that is where what I've termed as the decarbonization dilemma. That is where this dilemma plays out. Asia, as we were speaking about the recent posts that I did. So Asia, you see, is full of coal when it comes to its electricity resource. But then Asia is also going to be the country, the continent that is going to have a huge population explosion. Asia is also going to be the country that is also going to drive the energy demand. But then Asia is not going to be the continent that is going to have enough funds, that is going to have enough, other things, regulatory and infrastructural support to undergo a very quick and hasty energy transition. So this is the decarbonization dilemma. How does this big chunk of the world, Asia and Africa, where the energy demand is going to come from, how do they deal with the energy transition? How do they deal with the climate change and everything? Because that's a reality, of course. I don't deny that. Pakistan just had a flood that cost around $30 billion to the country. But then how this is going? So these are some questions that remain out there, and we need, I think collectively, we all need to work on these questions.
Wow. Osama, I would love to visit with you again in the future, because I had a blast talking to you, and I love the way I love the way you're thinking about all of this. And it's the same thing that I like, is talking about solutions and elevating the discussions and not throwing rocks. Now, I make fun of our political folks because it's part of you got to make fun of people. I mean, you just got to do that. But I love having these worldwide discussions, because I'm going to say, as an American, so many Americans do not think about the rest of the world. That's a downfall of the American society, is my opinion. So, but thank you so much for stopping by the podcast, and we'll have this out there, and I'd love to visit with you again. I'll have all your contact information in the show notes as well, too. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stuart. It was a pleasure.